You know, I'm almost afraid to see what will be left of Christ when these pop culture pagans finish deifying themselves. Won't be no more commandments, crosses, or manger scenes to be seen. No more praying football teams kneeling under Friday night lights. I almost feel like we too have denied him thrice because we just let them take all his symbols down without even putting up a fight. Meanwhile, they are working hard, toiling in darkness to please their God, tinkering with automatons and cobbling together androgynous creatures, all while serving baphomet in secret. They scared to say his name, so they call us Easter worshippers. Building sex bots, trying to live forever by uploading their consciousness into artificially intelligent golems. But what if I is not me? At least not the one you can see. What if life is a gift and consciousness is received and not created by chemicals in the brain? And maybe that's why he said, suffer the little ones to come to me. And if we let them, they will, because they still know their father's voice. Yeah, I bet that's not him, though, deceiving us, whispering in our ear, telling us that it's a woman's body, so it's a woman's choice. Man, even in the womb, the very DNA disproves this. I wonder how much can be left of Christ when our most helpless are not even deemed human. Hey, what's going on, party people? Welcome to episode 9 of the North Star Podcast. I'm your host, Robert Jenkins. As always, I'm in the seat perilous coming to you this evening. And I have the pleasure of, I've had the pleasure of just presenting my second original poem. And this one is called Left of Christ. And the subject matter is pretty pointedly political, but it's also pointedly religious and spiritual. They say that things you ain't supposed to talk about in public is religion and politics. But my question has always been, who are they telling me what I can talk about? These are the things that I find the most interesting and the most important things to talk about are religion and politics, among other things. So I'm going to do a little breakdown of what that poem meant to me. And of course, it's a poem, so you can feel free to interpret it however you will, in whatever way it speaks to you or doesn't speak to you. I hope it does. I hope it reaches you in some important and meaningful way. But anyway, it's called Left of Christ. So, of course, I'm talking about the political left. And I'm not necessarily talking about the Democrat Party per se, although more and more they are becoming leftist. They're not becoming liberals, or they're no longer liberals. They're becoming leftists, which is extreme left. And what that means is it's essentially communist or socialist. The thing about communism and socialism, however, is that they are incompatible with the belief in a higher power. In fact, both communism and socialism hold that there is no God, and that, in fact, the state is God, and the state is the manifestation of power over the masses. And that is who they revere as God, that the state as an entity, power, in fact. Another thing that you'll notice if you do any kind of reading on leftist authors, leftist philosophy, not only do they not believe in any religion per se, they actually kind of believe, I would have to classify them as Satanists. And when I say Satanists, I don't mean some cat with horns and a tail down in Hades. I'm talking about they are the adversaries of God. And that's why they consistently embrace so many things that are so bewildering to the average person who doesn't subscribe to their philosophy. So these cats, so you'll see, I'll get to it later, but I'm gonna go line by line and we'll kind of get into exactly what I mean here. And I want to say at the outset too, I'm almost in a way surprised that I wrote this poem. I don't have the date and time on it here, but I wrote it recently, like maybe a month or two ago, and it's kind of uncharacteristic of me because my own beliefs regarding Christ or Jesus are evolving. They're constantly evolving, and I have to say that I'm probably not in the mainstream when it comes to my take on Jesus. However, I also know that God is working on me, just like I think He's working on everybody. If you allow Him to, and if you if you're not consciously opposing Him working on you, and so even though I don't share, even though I differ a little bit when it comes to certain core beliefs about Jesus, I can definitely say that it gives me pause and it makes me think about who He is and who He was and what He meant to us today, what He means to us today, when you consider that so many people on the left oppose Him. I'm reading a book right now called Dark Agenda by Horowitz. I think it's David Horowitz. And in that book, he describes how the lady who basically took prayer out of schools was a militant, hardcore atheist. And she essentially just, like you said, it's hard to understand what to call her other than a Satanist. She's an adversary of Christ. She's an antichrist. Madeline Murray O'Hare was her name, if I remember correctly. She's up here. She's from Maryland too, and she launched her lawsuits up in Baltimore. And her stated goal said Christians are horrible, murderous people. And her stated goal was to not allow her son to be forced into, saying prayer in school. But and in that book, they described the leftist tactic, how they essentially used the Supreme Court to do an end run around the people of the United States, which, by the way, no matter how you slice it, the United States is a nation founded by Christians. Now, the interesting thing is the Christians, like the Pilgrims and others who came over here, the Quakers and all those cats, they founded this country, but they explicitly they founded it on religious principles, but they explicitly eventually wrote into the Constitution protections so that all religions would be protected. In other words, they were Christians, but they knew how it felt as citizens of England to be persecuted by the government, who believed, I think it was the Anglican Church, believed in a whole different form of Christianity than they did, and they literally was putting these cats in jail, in some cases probably even killing them, just serious persecution. So when those Pilgrims, the Pilgrims came over, they explicitly desired to have, they were explicitly Christian, but they were Protestants who did not fit in with the traditional Orthodox views of the society that they fled. And so they explicitly and conscientiously built into our society these key protections for religions, which was eventually codified in the First Amendment to the Constitution. That says that the government, the Congress, shall make no law regarding the freedom of religion. Now, what these leftists have done, these communists and socialists who don't believe in God, their religion does not admit of God, because they think that the state, the government, is the highest being, and they think that really man is the highest being, and that they think that man can perfect this society. That's why they're always trying to change the way you talk and the way you act and all this kind of stuff. And that is, like, by definition, the same thing that, according to tradition, Satan was accused of. He thought he could do it better. He thought he didn't have to submit to the rules of God. He thought, why would I worship man? I'm higher than man. You know what I'm saying? He was pridefully rebellious. He was taken with his own elevated sense of himself. And that's why I use the term Satanist or adversarial to Christ, to God, to describe leftist philosophy. And it, like I said, if you read any serious scholarship on the matter, the leftists themselves say this. Religion is the opiate of the masses. It's something that keeps you high and keeps your mind off of things and deludes you and clouds your judgment. They say this a lot. So anyway, that's where this poem is coming from. And I'm a bit surprised, again, that I wrote it. However, I don't like being pushed around and told what to do and how to think and stuff like that. The leftists also they like to act as though they're not anti-religious or anti-religion, anti-God, but they are. And what they do, though, is they embrace religions like Islam, because they can use those disparate groups of people, whether they be Islamic or whether they be black people who are devoutly Christian. When you consider them as a group, black people are just devoutly Christian, but they use us all to serve their own ends. And they put on the trappings of religion and talk the language. They talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. So anyway, that's kind of what this poem's about. So and this is spoken word. This is not like mystical, deep, philosophical poetry. This is not my most poetic stuff. It's designed to be spoken word. So I say I'm almost afraid to see what will be left of Christ, and I use that term intentionally, left of Christ, when the pop culture pagans finish deifying themselves. That's what it's all about, right? Ain't gonna be no more commandments, crosses, or manger scenes to be seen, thanks to people like Madeline Murray O'Hare. No more football teams praying under Friday night lights. She explicitly said she didn't want people to be able to pray in school. That's not what the First Amendment says. There is no wall of separation between church and state in the sense of we cannot have our religion. The wall is that the government cannot infringe on our religion. But they, of course, the leftists took this whole concept and flipped it on its head. Another reason why I say they're adversaries of Christ. God is the right way. They do it the left way, the wrong way. They explicitly said that the Constitution says there's a wall of separation between church and state, meaning that you can't have any religion in state affairs. But that's not what it said. For 200 and something years in this country, the prevailing opinion amongst the common people and the courts and everybody else was that individuals can believe and practice their beliefs however, whenever, however, and wherever they want it. Freedom of assembly. You have the First Amendment talks about freedom of assembly, the right to peaceably assemble. That's one of the things that you are allowed to do. Peaceably assemble to celebrate your religion in whatever way you want to do it. And then whether you assemble on school grounds or in some government building, that's not the issue. You are free as individuals. We are free as individual citizens to do that. The government is the one that is hog-tied and unable to interfere with our expression of religion. But the leftists, again, use the Supreme Court to flip that common sense interpretation on its head and say, oh, you individuals can't express any religion if there's anything remotely involved with the government. No, that's not the way. It was never understood like that until like 1960 or something like that. Starting with Roe versus Wade, then going on up until I forget the name of that court case that decided the prayer in school issue. Anyway, y'all know I got a little spark in me, a little spirit, a little uppityness. You know what I'm saying? I don't like being pushed around, and so that's why I say I almost feel like we too have denied him thrice, because we just let them take away all his symbols and didn't even put up a fight. That's what I was talking about. In the Bible, Peter, who in some books was God's chosen disciple, others say it was Mary. But in the Bible, Peter is a very central figure among Jesus's disciples. And he said, we'll stick by you, Lord. We got your back, dog. And Jesus said, nope, you're going to deny me. Matter of fact, you're going to deny me 3 times before the cock crows. And when the Romans and the Jews, the Sanhedrin and all those cats came to grab Jesus and take him into custody, and they said, yo, I think that's one of his boys right there. Peter, ain't you one of his boys? And Peter said, no, I don't know that dude. And then they asked him again later on, and he was like, I don't know him. And they said, no, I know you. I seen you with Jesus, dog. And Peter said, no, not me, man. I don't even know this dude. And right when he said that 3 times, the cock crowed. That was what he talking about. Peter denied Jesus thrice, and that's what I was referring to. And I feel like we have denied him thrice, letting people tell us that we can't celebrate our religion. And however, you notice is Muslims can celebrate their religion. Ramadan, Rosh Hashanah, you get those are Muslims and Jews. You can get Kwanzaa, you can celebrate every religion you want to, but for some reason in public life, it's Christianity that seems to be barred and oppressed and minimized on purpose. And like I said, that makes me wonder about who Jesus was when they let all these other religions go and celebrate more or less freely, but then deny Christians. So even though they took away all of our God's symbols and we let them do it, I noticed that they are working hard, toiling in darkness to please their God. And y'all know who I'm talking about right there. And I say one of the ways that they're proving their worthiness and worshiping their God in darkness is that they're tinkering with automatons, all these artificially intelligent robots and algorithms that they're messing around with. That's the whole point of this thing. They don't believe that God created life, but yet they are in themselves trying to create life. So they're making themselves God. That's a secular attempt to become God. And if you don't believe me, all you got to do is look up Google. That's part of that artificial intelligence God complex. But if you look it up, people like Ray Kurzweil and others talk about being gods, becoming gods, knowing everything that God knows through their algorithms, through their search engines, and through their artificial intelligence. So they are consciously, and they admit it, trying to become God or godlike. And I say they're serving Baphomet in secret. They over here cobbling together androgynous creatures. And what I was specifically thinking about that was that Caitlyn Jenner, Bruce Jenner photo shoot where he was sitting on the cover of Vogue or whatever it was, trying to look all feminine and had his hands behind his back and stuff. And that just struck me as an odd photo. And that's why I said they cobbling together androgynous creatures. And when you say androgynous creatures, you have to immediately think about Baphomet. And Baphomet was a personification of one of the demons in the Bible. It may have even referred to Satan, but he was always pictured as having a goat's head with the horns and the little pentagram right there. And he's androgynous. He has male and female body parts. And he mocks Jesus when he does the divine hand symbol. And he's sitting there like this, and he has breasts and then presumably male body parts. So that's what I was talking about when you start looking at it on a symbolic level, cobbling together these androgynous creatures, which is of course serving Baphomet in secret. Now this next one, I say they scared to say his name, even though they call us Easter worshipers. Now, I don't know if y'all heard about this, but a couple of months ago, during Easter, there was a huge terrorist attack. I think it was in Sri Lanka. And these Muslims attacked and killed hundreds of Christians on Easter Day. And they did that because, if you're not familiar with Easter, my understanding, we celebrate Easter because that is when it celebrates the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So when Jesus was murdered by the Jewish Sanhedrin with the acquiescence of the Roman, proconsul or whatever he was, who actually just said, hey, I ain't got nothing to do with that. Y'all want to kill him, y'all kill him. And then the Jewish leadership of his day said, yep, off with his head. And they basically hung him from a tree, it says in various places in the Bible, but they crucified him essentially. So Christians believe that on Easter, Jesus rose. That's Easter, Good Friday and Easter Sunday. He crucified on Friday and rose on Sunday. I think that I'm getting my theology correct there. The point is, Easter is one of the holiest days to Christians. It is the central date that celebrates the central event in all of Christianity. And on that date, in I think it was Sri Lanka, Muslims killed with bombs and guns hundreds of Christians. I think it was something like 200 Christians were murdered as they worshiped. And the news wouldn't even say that they were Christians. And Barack Obama, to his shame, and Hillary Clinton, to her shame, both committed leftists, wouldn't even say that Muslims killed Christians on a Christian high holy day. They said, our hearts go out to the Easter worshipers. That's what they tweeted. Little trite stuff like that. Our hearts go out to the Easter worshipers. No, you mean the Christians who were slaughtered as they knelt in prayer by Muslims? You can't say that? Why you can't say that? We're not talking about the whole religion of Islam. We're talking about those people who did the killing. They were Muslims, and the ones they killed were Christians, kneeling in church on Easter Sunday. And they say, sorry, what happened to those Easter worshipers? And this is what I'm talking about, how it just baffles me how much allegiance we give as black people to the Democrat Party. Because one of the things that is so incongruous about this marriage between us and them is that we are devoutly Christian. When you look at, 80-90% of black people are Christians and go to church and believe in Jesus. And yet the leadership of the political party that we pledge our allegiance to and our loyalty to won't even say that Christians were killed on Easter Sunday. They scared to say his name. My next verse, I say, they are building sex bots, trying to live for, y'all know, I ain't got to get into that. Y'all know what they doing. They trying to live forever by uploading their consciousness into artificially intelligent golems. I think we talked about that already. And I say, but what if I is not me, at least not the one you can see? What if life is a gift and consciousness is received and not created? And my reading on the subjects it indicates that the consciousness, that divine spark, what I believe to be a divine spark in us that makes us human, it's not, the leftists don't believe in God. So they believe that it's just chemicals in the brain. These chemicals and electrical current creates life. So everything that we can perceive and everything that we are and all the beautiful music that we create and all the beautiful love that we make and all of the structures that we conceive and all of the science that we understand, all the deep things that human beings are, it's just electricity in the brain running through some chemicals. Really? How much faith does it take to believe that? It takes more faith to not believe in God, I think, than it does to believe in God. You know what I'm saying? But that's what these cats believe. They believe that everything that we see around us just popped into being from the Big Bang. And I'm like, dude, the Big Bang, if anything, it sounds more like some divine being saying, let there be light. And then all of a sudden there was nothing. And then suddenly there was something. That's what it sounds like if you're going to talk about a Big Bang. Excuse me. Excuse me. And so here's the the worst part about the worst part about leftist philosophy and their lack of belief in God is to me, I cannot figure out how one approaches questions of morality, right and wrong, if you don't believe in God. Where do you get your concept of right from if not from God? And where do you get your concept of wrong from if not from that which is opposed to God? And that's why they talk about things like, killing abortion is not killing a baby. It's a clump of cells. It's part of a woman's body. So it's a woman's choice. And I said, that's a lie, because even in the womb, the DNA disproves it. When you look at a father and a mother, when they're a man and a woman, when they come together and their two cells get together and produce a zygote, and that zygote starts to divide and multiply, as soon as that zygote becomes a clump of cells, if you go in and take the DNA of that new collection of cells, it has different DNA than the mother. So that tells you it's not part of your body. It's not part of the dad's body. It's a little bit of the dad, a little bit of the mom together. A and B, A plus B equals C. It's like an algebraic equation. Thesis, antithesis, and whatever the third one is. But you see what I'm saying though? It's like, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. It's the synthesis of two separate beings, which by definition is a third being. So you can't be saying like, it's just a clump of cells. Well, yeah, it is just a clump of cells, but it's a clump of cells that has totally different DNA than the mom or the dad. And if you were to have that DNA at a crime scene somewhere, they would test it and be like, somebody killed a mother and her child, because we can see two separate sets of DNA. That's science right there, by the way. They claim to believe in science, but clearly they don't. I feel like people know this too. I think deep down in our hearts we know this, but it's inconvenient. So we just don't want to be burdened with a child. So we just make up all this language to make it seem like it's not a child and like it's not a living being. But anything growing is obviously alive, right? Anything that grows is alive. These cells are multiplying. They're obviously alive. And if they have their own DNA, they're obviously a separate being. And yeah, I was reading somewhere one time, it said that scientists looking through electron microscopes or some such contraption noticed that at the fertilization, when the male sperm fertilized the female ovum, there was a flash of light. And I thought, wow, let there be light. When a male sperm penetrates the egg, there's a light. But you have to be looking through an electron microscope to see it. And I said, another Big Bang. Yeah, so that's what this poem was about. Like I said, this was overtly political and overtly spiritual, overtly religious, and guess what? I'm overtly proud of it. So I hope you liked it. It felt pretty good to get it off my chest. It also felt pretty good to just get it out there and produce it and finally start getting this podcast together. You notice I got my background is blue. There's several reasons. Blue is one of my favorite colors, my fraternity colors. It's just always a color that has followed me throughout my life. Air Force veteran, blue and silver. So I was just trying something a little more, and I realized, I don't have to have such a news looking set or such a fancy looking, like somber looking set, because I like to get a little funky with stuff a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I'm a scholar. I'm a gentleman scholar. Yeah, I'm not no scholar. I'm more of a lay person. I'm more of an informed lay person, but you don't have to be all stiff and scholarly with it. You know what I'm saying? I'm a poet as well. So, having said all that, once again, I hope y'all enjoyed this 8th episode of the North Star Podcast. I hope y'all tune in. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you tune in for the next episode. And in the meantime, hope everything is cool and copacetic. And I want to bid y'all 2 digits.